Welcome to the Money Talk Show. We're jumping straight into a pretty startling idea today, one that really challenges almost everything we think we know about finance.
It really does.
So imagine two people. They start out with the exact same income, they invest in the exact same market, they have all the same information.
Right. A level playing field.
Exactly. But decades later, one of them is, financially independent, truly wealthy, while the other is still stressed out, probably in debt, and just sort of chasing their tail.
And if you ask most people why that happens, they'll point to things like, oh, one was smarter, or one had a secret formula, some complex math.
Right, a hot tip.
The hot tip, exactly. But the uncomfortable truth that's laid out in The Psychology of Money is that the real difference maker is almost never calculus or genius. It's just behavior.
And that's really the core of our conversation today. We're not looking at spreadsheets. We're looking at a behavioral blueprint for how wealth is actually built. It's about how people work, not just how money works.
Because so much of it is emotional, not logical. And let's start with maybe the most challenging idea in the book, which is that when it comes to money, no one is crazy.
Okay, that one feels counterintuitive. I mean, you see someone making a choice that is just objectively destroying their finances.
Like racking up huge credit card debt on, I don't know, a fancy car.
Right, or panic selling everything at the absolute bottom of the market. Your first instinct is to think that person is irrational or reckless. So why does the book insist on empathy?
Because every financial choice, even the ones that look terrible from the outside, makes perfect sense to the person making it at that moment. And that's because their decision-making framework isn't built on some universal logic. It's built on their unique life experiences.
Their upbringing, what their parents taught them, past traumas.
Exactly. Past traumas especially. What you've seen happen with money directly impacts what you believe is possible.
So if I grew up, say, during a really volatile economic time, or I saw my parents lose their jobs in a recession, my fear of the stock market isn't necessarily logical, but it's completely understandable.
It's perfectly understandable.
Yeah.
To that person, holding cash feels rational because their history taught them that the market is a destructive force. But then you take someone who grew up during a boom,
And they see a market downturn as a huge opportunity, a sale.
and they think they're being perfectly smart. The key takeaway for you listening is that you have to understand these different histories. It's not about judgment. It's about empathy.
And if we accept that our own histories guide us, we also have to respect the randomness of the world, which brings us to the next big idea, the invisible roles of luck and risk.
Yes, and what's so fascinating is how these two forces just completely warp our perception of success. We love a clean story, right?
Oh, absolutely. The hero's journey.
The hero's journey. A successful person tells a story where their talent led directly to their success, making it seem like a repeatable skill. But risk, or even just bad timing, can make a failure look like pure stupidity, even if the decision itself was sound.
And the real danger there, if you don't acknowledge the role of luck, is that it creates this false sense of control.
Precisely. If you think all your wins are due to your own genius, you get overconfident. You start taking bigger and bigger risks, thinking your skill is going to save you every time.
But on the flip side, if you blame every failure on your own mistakes, you can become paralyzed by fear.
And you miss out on good opportunities. So the smart approach isn't trying to eliminate luck or risk. That's impossible. It's about designing a life that can survive a few bad hands.
You have to appreciate success, but always respect uncertainty.
Yeah, you have to. We see the one person who wins big, but we totally ignore the thousands who took the exact same bet and just got wiped out by one bit of bad luck.
That shifts the whole goal, doesn't it? It's not about finding the fastest path anymore. It's about finding the most resilient one. And that leads to what I think is the most powerful idea in the whole book.
I agree.
Survival is the most important role.
People are always asking, what's the trick? What's the secret to getting rich fast? What's the highest return I can get? But the book just flips that question on its head. The most powerful skill isn't chasing maximum returns. It's endurance. It's longevity.
So the goal isn't just fast growth. It's avoiding any decision that could, as the book says, end the game.
Absolutely. Think
Yeah.
of it like a marathon. You don't try to sprint the first mile at a world record pace.
No, you'd burn out. The goal is to finish.
The goal is to finish. Wealth is built by managing your downside risk, by minimizing how fragile you are. People get so focused on the big wins, they ignore things like being overexposed or having no cash. And a single huge loss can wipe out a decade of slow, steady growth.
It's the difference between trying to win big and trying not to lose big.
That's it. If you manage the downside, the upside eventually takes care of itself. just because you're still around. You're still in the game.
And staying in the game is what gives time the runway it needs to work its magic, which brings us to the actual mechanism of wealth. Compounding.
So simple on paper, but so hard for our brains to really grasp.
Because it's boring. It's so slow and unexciting in the short term that we just discount it completely. It's hard to get excited about today's tiny interest payment.
Especially when the market is full of these exciting, high-risk gambles that promise you'll get rich overnight. But the insight here is critical. Compounding rewards patience far more than it rewards brilliance.
I mean, look at someone like Warren Buffett. Something like 99% of his wealth was earned after his 50th birthday. His skill is undeniable, but his real superpower was starting early and just surviving.
That's the key. The biggest obstacle to building wealth isn't that the math is hard. It's that we interrupt the growth.
We panic sell. We let our lifestyle costs eat up all our savings.
Or we keep chasing the next hot trend, racking up fees and resetting the clock.
So the average person who gets, say, a consistent 7% return over 40 years, they will almost certainly end up with more money than the genius who gets 15% for 5 years, but then panics and sits on the sidelines for the next decade.
That is the behavioral gap right there. Time is the most powerful force. If you can just build good habits and stick to them, you don't need to be exceptional. You just need to be consistent.
Okay, so let's talk about that transition. The shift you have to make from accumulating wealth to securing it. This gets into the difference between getting wealthy versus staying wealthy.
And the skills for those two things are, well, they're basically opposites. They require completely different psychological toolkits.
How so?
Getting wealthy often takes risk, optimism, maybe even a little aggression. But staying wealthy, that needs caution, humility, and a ton of self-control. So many people make their first million and then lose it because they just can't switch gears.
So if getting rich is about taking risks, what's the most important action for staying rich?
It's the consistent, disciplined, and frankly boring action of living below your means and fighting lifestyle inflation at every turn.
And that's where most people fall down.
It is. Your income goes up and your spending goes up right alongside it. You could be earning $500,000 a year, but if your mortgage and your car payments and your vacations scale up too, you're never free. The stress never goes away.
The book really hammers this point. True wealth is financial independence. It's not the stuff you can show off. It's what you don't see.
Absolutely. The money you saved and invested, that's the freedom. That is the option to change your life. If you buy a yacht, everyone sees the yacht. But if you save that money instead, no one sees it. But you gain this incredible leverage over your own time.
Which makes the real value of money so clear. And that's lesson 6. Wealth is freedom, not stuff.
Right. If you strip away all the luxury and status, what is money's greatest value? It's control. Control over your own time. The richest thing money can buy is independence. It's flexibility. It's peace of mind.
That's the real dividing line, isn't it? If your goal is to spend money to impress people or to fuel a lifestyle that makes you work a job you hate,
Then the money controls you. Simple as that.
but if you use it to build a buffer, to create autonomy, then you control the money.
And that desire for autonomy is so deeply human that it often conflicts with the purely academic view of finance. Which brings us to lesson 7, reasonable beats rational.
Yeah, we're always taught that the best financial decision is the one that's perfectly rational, the highest possible return, the lowest possible fee.
The one that looks perfect on a spreadsheet.
Exactly. So why does that perfect plan so often fail in the real world?
Because humans are not spreadsheets. A decision can look perfect on paper, like, say, an ultra-aggressive portfolio. But if it causes you crippling anxiety, you will abandon that plan at the absolute worst possible time.
When the market drops 30%, you're not going to follow the rational instruction to hold. You're going to panic.
You're going to sell. So the goal shouldn't be just maximizing potential return. It should be optimizing for peace of mind. Reasonable decisions are the ones that let you sleep at night. They're the strategies you can actually stick to when the world feels like it's on fire.
So being reasonable is actually more profitable in the long run than being optimal.
Exactly. The best plan is always the one you can actually follow.
Okay, so with consistency and comfort as our foundation, let's talk about the market realities we have to plan for. This brings us to a huge one. Lesson 8. Tail events shape everything.
This is like the 80-20 rule on steroids. When you look at market history, the vast majority of all the gains, all the wealth creation, it comes from a tiny handful of rare, unpredictable events.
So, like, the outperformance of just a few dozen companies explains most of the stock market's entire history of returns.
Precisely. Which means trying to predict the future is basically a fool's game. If 99% of the wealth comes from 1% of the moments, how do you even build a strategy for that?
It seems impossible.
Well, the strategy isn't prediction, it's positioning. You have to expose yourself to the market consistently, knowing that most of your individual bets won't be home runs. But the occasional one, that is, will pay for all the others.
You just have to survive long enough to catch one of those rare events when it happens.
And surviving those periods requires a critical buffer, which is lesson 9. Room for error is power.
Financial failure almost never happens because you made a bad prediction. It happens because you couldn't afford to be wrong.
That's it. When you run your life or your portfolio too tightly, with no margin of safety, you become a forced seller. You have to sell your assets to pay bills at the worst possible time. Your debt dictates your career.
And that margin for error could be an emergency fund, low debt, a flexible career. It's just a financial breathing room.
Absolutely. That flexibility is what allows you to wait out the storm. It lets you stay in the game until the next tail event comes along. Flexibility is longevity. Longevity is wealth.
All right, let's pivot to the two big internal enemies of creating wealth. The first one is ego. Lesson 10 calls it a catastrophic flaw.
Because ego is what pushes you to show off, to spend money to impress other people. The biggest mistake successful people make is trying to signal their wealth through consumption. The bigger house, the fancier car.
And money used for that is just permanently wasted. It's the definition of counterproductive. The need to look rich is what keeps so many people from ever being rich.
Wealth grows quietly. It's protected by humility. Ego is loud. It attracts attention and encourages you to take stupid risks to maintain appearances. Financial humility, just not needing that validation, is the ultimate shield for your freedom.
And the second internal enemy is the power of stories. Lesson 11, we're just suckers for a good narrative.
Oh, absolutely. The financial world runs on them. When a powerful story takes hold, say, about an industry that can't fail or a CEO who is a genius, we just ignore the data. That's how bubbles form. People respond to the plot, not the numbers.
We see it in every single market cycle. Everyone knows the data, but the story of this time is different is just too powerful to resist.
And that's the behavioral battle. The solution isn't to avoid stories. You can't. It's to recognize their power. To ask yourself, is this objective reality or am I just reacting emotionally to a really good plot?
So we have to manage risk, manage ego, manage narratives. It sounds like a lot. Do you need to be some exceptional investor to pull this off?
No. And that is the beautiful, simple truth of Lesson 12. You don't need to be exceptional. The vast, vast majority of financial success comes from consistency, self-control, and patience, not from a moment of genius.
So ordinary behavior done over an extraordinarily long time produces extraordinary results.
You don't need to outsmart the world. You just need the discipline to show up every month, invest what you can, and then ignore all the noise. Most people fail because of a lack of discipline, not a lack of intelligence.
And that brings us to the final and maybe the most difficult behavioral skill of all, defining the finish line. Lesson 13, the goal is enough.
In a world that's built on comparison, endless striving just creates anxiety and greed. If you're always looking at the person next to you who has more, you will never, ever feel successful. It doesn't matter how much you have.
So real financial peace means you have to actually set a goalpost?
You have to define enough for yourself. This isn't about settling. It's about protecting your own happiness, protecting the freedom you already have. It stops you from taking those reckless risks just to keep up. Contentment is the ultimate protective shield, and maybe the hardest skill to learn.
This whole conversation, this whole look into the psychology of money, it just confirms that central idea from the beginning. Money isn't about how smart you are. It's overwhelmingly about how you behave under pressure.
Success really goes to the people who are calmer, who plan for the unexpected, who respect risk, and who prioritize survival over just about anything else. How you behave matters so much more than what you know.
We learned today that true wealth is what you don't see. It's the resources you keep in reserve to protect your time and your freedom.
So we'll leave you with a final thought to consider. We all know people who take on huge risks or endure incredible stress just to create an appearance of wealth.
What risks or what stress are you currently carrying for that same appearance?
If you want control over your money, your emotions, and your future,
subscribe to the Money Talk Show. Because wealth isn't built by numbers, it's built by behavior.